So Kemi Badenoch's spat with Reform UK has escalated over claims that she urged bosses at GB News to cut the airtime given to the Reform UK leader Nigel Farage. Now, they claim that during a meeting with the channel's chief executive, she said that GB News should not be a haven for my critics. Is the Tory leader shooting herself in the foot? That's the question. Well, joining me now is the Director of Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood, and also Reform UK MP Lee Anderson. All right, I'm going to start with you. Mark Littlewood, what are your thoughts on that? Kemi Badenoch.
Well, I don't think she actually leaked this information, and according to Angelo, the chief exec at GB News, they did have a very convivial, non-acrimonious meeting. And look, it is true, we're about to hear from one of them, that Reform spokespeople get a lot of time on GB News. But the way to correct that isn't to complain about it, it's to put yourself forward. If I'd been in Kemi's position, I would have asked GB News, can I have my own show, please? Can I have an hour a week? I'd quite like to talk to GB News viewers. I'd quite like to get some experts around the table to help me develop policy. What do you say to that? If you're complaining, you're losing. And I'd like to see a lot more Conservatives on GB News, a lot more people of all political stripes, rather than trying to diminish Reform spokespeople, because they actually show up and speak. But I want to see that from all political parties. And the best way of getting that is to put your front foot forward, not to complain about other people being on the television.
Well, listen, I can tell you, I've been at GB News from the very, very start. I'm old school. And I can tell you now that literally none of them would come on. So it was only the Conservative Party that would come on. So most of the time that GB News has been on air, we've had more Conservatives on the channel than anybody else, really. And they would come on air. The Labour Party were not so generous with their time. And in fact, we have contacted Kemi Badenoch's office and we're waiting for a response because I have invited her onto my show. Lee Anderson.
Yeah, I want to agree with Mark a little bit here. I mean, look, I was deputy chairman, Nana, of the Conservative Party. I had my own show on GB News, still have, by the way, and I was interviewing Tory MPs on my show. Phil and Esther were Tory MPs, had their own show. We've had other people. We've got Miriam on there. Jacob Rees-Mogg, Miriam Cates. You know, we've had other Tory MPs and ex-MPs on GB News presenting shows, doing whatever. I didn't hear Kemi Badenoch complaining then that, or you know, the Labour Party might have complained at the time, as they do. But GB News has always been fair, you know, and when I'm in and around Parliament, I'm always asking MPs of all parties to come on the show, to come on the channel, and usually get a big fat no. Sometimes they do, but you know, it's a great platform, and I think it's a little bit childish to have a pop at GB News over this. That's if it's in fact true, because, you know, on my show, and I know on other shows as well, Nana, we do ask, you know, people from all parties, like I've said, to come on and try and make it fair and balanced. And we get told as presenters, Nana, that we must make it balanced and give everybody a fair crack of the whip.
Well, to be fair, and we always invite Labour politicians on as well, it's more difficult to get them on. And I think, you know, that's a shame, but we'd like to get everybody on. But with regard to this particular argument, this you've got more members than us, or you're not telling the truth about your membership. Mark, is this fitting of a Conservative leader to be focusing on, some might say, such a petty issue?
It's a petty issue as such. I mean, congratulations to Lee and his party. They're recruiting thousands of members every day. And I think it would be remiss of those in the Conservative Party not to take notice of that. I think it's significant. It's probably not all of the talk of the town down the dog and duck, or it might be now because it's become such a news story. But it is significant. I think the misstep here was, why draw attention to a political rival that's doing well unless you're completely sure of your facts? I mean, if Kemi had really worked out that Reform had, for example, overstated its membership figures by a factor of 10 or 20 or 50, that they were out by 100,000, OK, you might be able to point that out. But according to independent media analysis, it's not the case. The number is basically right. I mean, if it's out at all, it's only by half a dozen. So a strange fight to pick, and I would have advised her against that. What I will say in her defence is I want a Conservative leader who's going to shoot from the hip. And that does mean that sometimes you're going to get something wrong. Usually my criticism of Kemi over the last 6 or 7 weeks is that she's been a bit too quiet. that she hasn't said enough. And if you want people to speak more, shoot from the hip more, then there are going to be some errors, I'm afraid. But I think this is one of them. The leader of the Conservative Party has managed to draw attention to the exploding, growing membership of a rival political party. Not great in PR terms from her perspective.
Well, she says that she's been watching the back end for days, so maybe there is other information and other sources, though. So she may have some other evidence that could suggest that something else is going on. I think she should be given time to explain herself. Do you not think that's fair? She should be given some time to explain herself before everyone sort of jumps, jumps into the sort of mire with her and starts to judge her.
No, sure, that's absolutely right. She may well know something I don't. I'm not a techie at all. Nigel Farage and Reform have responded by saying that her accusation is false. They've called in 4 media organisations. I think it was The Spectator, The Telegraph, the FT and one other that escapes my mind, to look at the software, which they say on balance supports Reform's analysis rather than Kemi's. If Kemi knows something remarkable that I don't, fine, but then sort of say it, provide the technical analysis that shows Reform's got it wrong. So if you're going to come out of the traps fast, you've got to keep fighting, I think, or realise that you've made a misstep and take a step back. But she says she's got some information about the back end of this software. Fine, say what it is.
Lee Anderson, your thoughts then? Is it a bit petty-minded to bother with this particular fight?
I think it is. I think if Kemi's had time to keep watching our counter over the Christmas holidays, you probably should have been spending a little bit more time with doing something else. Maybe watching a Carry On film. I've heard there's a new one coming out now called Carry On Kemi, and that would be a good watch because she's chosen a hill to die on, and it's not the right hill. She's picked a fight with Nigel. I mean, this is a result of a gentle tease with the graphics being shown onto CCHQ. She's come out swinging. If I'd have been advising Kemi, I'd have just said ignore it, carry on, enjoy your Christmas, speak to your MPs, get ready for the new year, get ready for the battle ahead. But she's come out swinging, and it's backfired. It's made a small story, really, front page news for the past 3 or 4 days, and it's great news for us. Our membership is flying, 30,000 new members since last Sunday. That's incredible, absolutely incredible. We've got a conference coming up next Friday in Leicester. That's sold out. Every single conference we're going to now is sold out. And all she's doing is giving us a free advert.
But weren't you a supporter of Kemi Badenoch? Because I remember with the leadership race between Rishi Sunak and the others, you backed her camp.
Yeah, I did back her camp. Sometimes you have to back the best candidate in that bunch, and she was the best candidate in my opinion. But I could not foresee at that time when I was backing Kemi that she should do something like this. I mean, I like Kemi. I get on really well with her. I think she's a strong woman, decent politician. But it shows a little bit of political immaturity. I think stop picking fights with Nigel. It's a waste of time. You're never going to beat him. He's been at it, the thick end of 3 decades doing this sort of stuff. He has these sort of politicians for breakfast. He really does. Go and pick on Labour. Go and pick on their policies. Leave us alone. We're doing all right. Thank you very much. And I tell you what, I'll just add to this. It's important because when I was deputy chairman, I went to over 100 associations to speak to members, fundraising, whatever. And the vast majority of Conservative members at those associations like Nigel Farage. They like what he's got to say. And now I'm visiting the same areas as a Reform MP at Reform associations. I'm seeing a lot of the same members there. That's the problem she needs to address, not whether or not our ticker counter is working on eggs.
All right. Well, listen. Sorry, final word. Mark Littlewood, briefly then, before we move on.
I'm just going to say, I'd hope a New Year's resolution from both Reform and Conservative. I don't know how this is all going to come together, but at some point we might have to work together to get rid of this ghastly government and to save Britain. It will be a good New Year's resolution on all sides. I think for those in Reform and those in the Conservatives to treat each other with respect and courtesy as we move forward, however our working relationship develops. I'd really like Kemi and Nigel and everybody in both parties to adopt that New Year's resolution for 2025.
Oh, that's so lovely. It's never going to happen. Thank you very much. I'm teasing you, Mark Littlewood, and also Lee Anderson. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.